It's June 4th, 2026, and welcome to episode 132 of the Driving Forward podcast. Whether you're joining us live or listening on one of our 18 platforms, including Reefs Across America Radio, where we broadcast every Tuesday evening from 4 to 5 p.m. Central Time, we appreciate your support. Next week, we have on the amazing Lance Healy. Lance has been on before. Last time we were talking about where he was going with Freight Facts. It had not launched. Now we're going to talk about the fact that it has launched. Although I'm going to have a feeling we're going to talk more about boats, music, and LTL freight than anything else. It'll be great to have Lance on. It's been over a year, I'm guessing, but always enjoy my discussions, Lance. Also, just as a note, Lance is the former or the founder, one of the founders of Banyan Technologies as well. So he's been around the industry forever and ever and has an amazing story. But looking forward to getting caught up with Lance next week. Other things we're up to. Here in a couple weeks, I'll be in Vegas with Mike Solars at Samsara Beyond. That should be fun. I think it's Aria Resort and Casino, says it right there. Following that, we have some folks at the North Carolina Management Conference. Then I'll be at TCA Refrigerated. I have a session that I'm speaking to there. Texas Trucking Association Annual Conference, Minnesota Trucking Association Annual Conference, McLeod. We also have the Tennessee Trucking Association on there as well. So the North Carolina one, very interested in that. We just joined quite a few more state organizations this year. So we're looking forward to meeting friends, customers, whatnot at all these new events. So looking forward to seeing anyone out in the wind there. I was able to spend this week, Monday, we can pull that down. I was able to spend Monday at the Minnesota Trucking Association golf outing. Meant to load up some photos, just realized I did not. But I spent the day golfing with Joe Thel, Todd Waldron, who's going to be back on the show, I think, in early July, and Chris Sonic. So that was, I've never golfed with Chris Sonic before, but I wouldn't say anyone golfed with me. I was absolutely horrible. Normally I'm a bunch of rounds in already and I practice over the winter, but I've been so busy. It was horrible. I did even Chris golfed better than I did. And Waldron has plenty of things he can fire at me now, as opposed to the next podcast he'll be on will probably be brutal for me. So hopefully there wasn't pictures. All right. So there are people in this industry who know all the talking points, and there are people who have earned the right to speak from that experience. Today's guest is firmly in that second category. Melanie Simard is the Vice President of Safety, Compliance, and Technical Support at Isaac Instruments, and we're going to learn what that all means here in a few minutes. She spent more than 2 decades in trucking, and her career has taken more than a few unexpected turns along the way. We're not going to spoil the story in the introduction because, trust me, it's a good one. It's one of my favorite stories, and Melanie's told it to me a couple of times, so I'm excited for you all to hear that. But here's what you need to know about Melanie. She's smart. She's extremely tough. She has opinions, and she likes people to hear them. She has credibility, and she's not afraid to challenge the way things have always been done. She also apparently believes that a relaxing winter weekend should involve flying down a mountain on a snowboard and showing up to the next conversation with a bunch of bruises. So clearly she's not afraid of the occasional hard landing. Today we're going to talk about the road that shaped her, the lessons she picked up along the way, and the evolution of safety and compliance, and what trucking companies need to understand about their drivers, their technology, and the future of the industry. Melanie, welcome to Driving Forward. It's great to have you on.
Thank you, Nate. Oh, nice intro. Quite a nice intro.
Well, it's everything I could piece together when I think about you. So, always a good conversation. You always have opinions, and you're always, especially in the winter, telling me how your legs are all bruised up from snowboarding. That's not the first time, I don't think. Um, so tell us a little bit about yourself, and kind of how you got into the industry. And this is a good story. I there's lots of great pieces to it, but why don't you kick it off with start at the beginning?
Well, thanks, Nate. I actually fell into trucking by luck or fluke because I didn't have, like, contrary to a lot of folks that I know in the industry that had a sister, a father, a brother that drove a truck before. I didn't know nothing about trucking. I was in college, and like a good college kid, I had a friend. She left college and she told me, you know what, Mel, I'm working at a place, I'm selling freight, and we drink every night. That seemed like the best ever job for a college kid, someone coming out of college. So I said, oh, what is that? So I started actually at a 3PL firm that is now huge in the industry. I started at Traffic Tech.
Sure.
And back then, Traffic Tech had maybe not even 100 employees. But it's true. I learned how to sell freight. I didn't even know. So, and for the folks that hears me right now, I'm from Canada. So the first language I learned was French before English, before I got, and it was my first education in college. I was at an English school. I was learning English back then in college, but I didn't know what freight even was. So I started at Traffic that started selling freight, and I thought the fleet side of thing was the coolest thing ever. I wanted to dispatch freight. And if we go back in the early 2000s, there was no GPS, there was no technology. So you had to call in and see where your truck was. And I really, truly wanted to be on the asset side of things. But again, it's early 2000. I'm a young college woman wanting to dispatch trucks and truck drivers, mostly men back then. I couldn't get a job at a dispatcher as a dispatcher. It was really, really hard. So after a few years at Traffic Tech, I just decided, you know what? If I go and drive these trucks, probably I'll get the street creds to become a dispatcher later on in life.
Absolutely. That's a great start, and thanks for watching, Jody. She says the California Trucking Association's excited to be here. So appreciate you watching, listening, whatever you're doing today. So that you moved in, you kind of fell in love with the general idea of the industry while you were brokering. What made you kind of take that next step then? I mean, you had the interest of the operations and the asset side. What really was the push to go to the asset side then?
Well, I think I wanted to have control on my freight. I wanted to have my actual customers giving me freight, having that control, putting it into my trucks. I thought it was such an interesting concept to have all those different types of vans, whether it's flatbed, whether it's dry box. How can you put more skids, make more money, fill out your trailer? That's really what interested me at first into the asset side of things. So I wanted to be that person that I was calling, looking if I had enough space in my van to move those two skids. So I thought it was quite something. And I'm someone that, well, you mentioned snowboarding, I'm someone that has to be in motion all the time. So trekking seemed to be the best place for me, picking up 3 phones at a time, 2 3 screens, doing a million things at a time. To me, it was something that was really exciting and I wanted to be part of. So that was my end goal. I think that was my vision. It was really to be on the dispatch side of things, but it wasn't as easy as I thought getting a job as a dispatcher. Although I was calling them every day, I knew the fleets around my area. I couldn't land a job as a dispatcher. And let's go back, it's 25 years now, so it was different. I think today, whether you're a young
Sure.
woman, but it was different back then. So that's what got me to, what if
Yeah.
I drive?
So when you first, what I mean, so that's really what took you into the cab of a truck was didn't really get the dispatch, wanted the dispatch, but you felt like you needed to jump in the cab of a truck and learn that side before you'd be accepted on that side of the industry.
Exactly, exactly. But then I fell into to the passion of driving a truck. When I sat in the cab, when I realized what it was, the open road, the freedom of going through North America anywhere and everywhere, whether it's bad weather or nice weather, whether it's escaping the Canadian Montreal winter weather to be down south in Laredo, Texas. It was just an amazing thing for a young person to discover. I've always loved to travel. I still love an adventure and travel. And trekking wasn't a job for me. And the cab was just, hey, I'm traveling the US and Canada, and I get to see everything, and I get paid doing it.
Right. I think a lot of so I started driving very young as well for the same reasons, go see the world and or at least North America. And do you remember the first time that you were completely alone on the road and realized that every decision is now yours, kind of the freedom of driving? And did any of those moments teach you anything about
Oh,
yourself?
yes. Well, it taught me first, I think it taught me how to trust myself because obviously it wasn't as simple as I put it here. I'm going to drive a truck, I'm going to get my CDL and sit in a cab. There was a lot of hiccups in terms of, well, I was trying to land a position in a trucking school here in Canada. We have like those huge CDL school,
Sure.
and those are the place where you need to go to be hired after. Well, when I went to those schools, they didn't think that a young 100-pound woman could be driving a truck. So they told me like it wasn't a job for me. They were talking about office work, and I really wanted to drive a truck. I was a snowboarder, but I drove dirt bikes when I was a kid, for ATVs and all those fun engine stuff. So I really wanted to drive a truck. So that was the first challenge barrier to overcome, is I had to pay my own way into a private trucking school because I couldn't get the government schooling that we have here. But I did it anyways because this is really something I wanted. And so I realized that, they've put a lot of doubts in my mind as to, you're young, you're a woman. Women don't drive trucks, especially with your weight, with your size, with your age. So I think the first thing that I learned is don't listen to the negative talk. And just trust yourself. It was the first thing, and I'll always remember because I started driving in January 2005 in the middle of a snowstorm. So I was leaving Montreal. My route was heading to Southern California, 3,000 miles. And my first 500 miles were in such a storm that I had to really trust my instinct.
Yeah, I think, we all kind of remember our first few loads. That yours is right up there with mine. My first load was a load of office furniture to Manhattan as a brand new driver. So, and then my second load was out of New Jersey to Stockton, California, hauling a load of batteries. So I had hazmat and had to go over the top of the mountains. And this was in winter as well. So chains were involved, everything like that. And I look back at that and I'm like, what was this company that I drove for thinking? Because, now 30 years later and having dispatched as many trucks as I've dispatched and worked with thousands of drivers, that's not exactly the wisest choice. But, 3,000-mile load through a snowstorm, that's driving, right? But the same thing, you got to take the load to Manhattan. It's got to be done. So trial by fire, and back in the day, that's how we trained everybody, was trial by the fire, I guess. So, um,
Yes. We had companies sending you to either New York or Chicago. So if you make it, you're going to be a trucker. That was back
there
in
you
the days.
go. Here's the keys. See you later. So how long did you spend on the road?
So all in all, 6 years, give or take 6 years, but at different times of my career, because I had that one goal of sitting and being a dispatcher. So when I started my first pass on the road, I did those a few months of running California because, and again, I didn't want to drive a dry box. I wanted to, I got some confidence from the first few months, and I said, well, okay, they told me I couldn't drive a truck. Now I proved them in the middle of winter I could go through snowstorm. Now I want the next step. And they had told me that I could never drive a flatbed because I wasn't strong enough. I couldn't chain tarp. So that was my goal after the first few months running a reefer, just to get the experience and also be able to be insured to run the US. As a Canadian, being insured, you needed a few months of experience, which I went through and got, and started driving my flatbed. That's what I wanted, flatbed, oversized. I had a nice little 379 with my tarps were matching my truck. It was all color match. It was perfect. And so I did that for 2 years, the first 2 years. And the gentleman that hired me gave me that almost brand new 379 and actually trusted me probably more than I trusted myself and believed in me at that time. Asked me after to come into his office and actually dispatch his fleet. So it was an offer I couldn't refuse. So after the first 2 years on the road, I sat and I worked for him for two and a half years before he decided to switch gear a bit. And I went on to other roles and I was offered other roles. But once and you know this, Nate, once you've been on the road, it's as if there's a part of you that's still in the cab and still wants to go in. So I went back a second time and a third time, and both times were running flatbed again, step deck, doing Western. I had realized that the East Coast wasn't my piece of cake. I didn't want to have the traffic.
West is best. West is best.
Yeah, and we could have parking, and being a young woman too, there's safety issues. So the East Coast wasn't something I felt comfortable, but I was running West Coast.
That was my favorite driving job. So when I started off running primarily, well, I guess 48 states, and Canada. Once I got a little bit of experience, I did local stuff, and then I stopped driving for a while. When I went back to driving, I liked running to California and back. That's I don't mind the mountains, I don't mind heights, I don't mind bridges. So knowing that every load is 1,500 to 2,000 miles, and you get to just load and go, that was great. I did my stint with flatbed heavy haul. But I eventually kind of zoned in on refrigerated and like that. So as a driver, I always like refrigerated because no matter where you went, you get freight. So, so what would you say the road, what did you struggle with kind of for the most part when you were out on the road? Was there any pieces of it that kind of always kind of circle back with you when you think about it, or any sort of major barriers that you felt like you crossed after you had gotten your license? Because you said that took a little bit.
Well, it was back, and we keep using back in the days, but back in the days, a young 20-something woman, it wasn't as common as it was. And being young as well, I was getting frustrated with the comments. So I think at first, before I understood the whole thing, I was getting angry. Like I would be stuck in traffic, hearing it on the CB, the comments, and there was comments in truck stop. Back then we had to go get our fuel bills at the Flying J, and just trying to grab my bill and being told, Yeah, you can't do that. It's got to be the truck driver coming and get your bill. And I was getting really frustrated. So before I flipped that narrative and used it on a positive side, I was I didn't understand why I could not be accepted in this industry as a truck driver, because to me it's a steering wheel, it's 75 foot, but
Sure.
gender has nothing to do with being able to sit in a cab and drive a truck. That was to me, but I started to realize that, okay, well, it's not as common, a young woman sitting in her truck. So I had to accept that. And that was my first big challenge. And then realizing that if I have to go to the restroom and it's 2 a.m., that it's not safe. I need to find better ways. I need to find ways to, I would stop during the day to shower rather than stopping at 10 o'clock and walking alone in a truck stop. So those were the things that I had to adapt for my own safety. And I had to realize that, it was important for me to redo my schedule. Now, I work in technology, but back then there was no ELD, so it was easy to stop during the day, take a 2 hour break to go shower, eat food, go back in your truck, and then that night, you know what we were doing, just redo your logbook and
Yeah.
keep going. So
That
it was
never
different
happened,
times.
Melanie. I don't know what you're talking about. So and here you are, the safety. So because you knew how not to, you knew how everybody did it. But yeah, no, I mean, who didn't? I hated running during the day. There was more traffic, especially on the West Coast. If you'd if you knew you were going through Salt Lake, Denver, Phoenix, LA, wherever, much better to come in on off hours than during the daytime hours. And I'd hit Chicago a lot, so you try to maneuver around the traffic that way, and you move whatever you need to move to make that happen. So it's unfortunate that the industry, but I mean, in a lot of ways, when you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, it wouldn't matter if you're driving a truck or you're driving a car. You'd kind of have to take that into thought if you were transiting late at night somewhere
Yeah.
in a area that might concern you. But it's unfortunate that you had to go through that. As we've seen more women join the industry, I think that it's much more accepted, but we still have a lot of work to do across the board. So you had to have thought, though, once you got into the flatbed side and you were successful at driving flatbed and step deck, that really nobody gets to tell you what you're capable of doing again, because you were doing things that was fairly uncommon at that time. Actually, it's still probably fairly uncommon today to see a 100-pound woman driving a flatbed, but it's not unheard of. I mean, you definitely see a few folks on social media. So would you agree with that? Nobody gets to tell you what you're capable. Was that a big confidence booster for you?
It took me a while, and I had a lot of great people along the road that helped me pull through this, helped me believe in myself, and kind of shut down the CB talk. I would get to a truck stop, starting to back up my truck, and learn how to shut the CB off when I was. But to your point, after a while, I realized that I could do more than most truckers, because, and if I was to go back on the road today, I wouldn't, like, I love and I have the biggest respect for the heavy haulers and the flatbed haulers. And I've done tarping and rack and tarps and all those crazy stuff. I don't think I would go back to driving a flatbed. It's a lot of work.
Right.
So but to me, I was sort of the king of the road. They couldn't tell me anymore. I knew how to load some crazy stuff that and chain it, and it was fun.
Good. Good. No, that's perfect. The uh when was there anybody who was your, I mean, you had mentioned the company owner that gave you the 379, but was there other people in your life that were encouraging to you that helped you keep kind of moving forward? Or were you more over that voice for yourself?
No, I had some very important people. The Dennis, the flatbed, the company that I worked for, was the first believer, and he used to give me take some of my freight when I was on the brokerage side, and then there was my first safety manager, and he was head of driver recruiting and safety manager, and he really showed me the rope, and he was this guy that started before us, and made me believe that whether I'm a woman or a guy, I could do it. He showed me everything. And after my 6 years on the road, the last time I was on the road, I was driving for that fleet again where Jerry was, and he's no longer with us, Jerry. And I remember I got pregnant when I was a driver, and I was pregnant, so I couldn't drive a truck anymore. And he took me on into the office and actually showed me safety and compliance and what it truly meant. And, I think you become someone with like the compassion and the passion for safety and compliance when you've done everything wrong as a truck driver and realize, wow, this could have been very dangerous. So how do I change that? How do I become that change agent to help drivers realize that they're professional? It's like the cowboys of the back in the days. It was starting to change. The industry was evolving. We're back in 2012, and
Sure.
this guy Jerry said, I think you'd be my replacement as a safety and compliance manager. I want to retire soon, so go have your baby, come back, and I'll teach you everything. And I think it was such a positive leader for me when I was in the cab, and then it became my mentor in the office and showed me how to make sure that the fleet and the drivers are making it home to their families.
Well, that's a perfect segue. We'll be coming up on a break here, but I'm going to ask you one last question. But that was the perfect segue to transition into kind of the next part, because now you're moving more into office roles and eventually your technology career that you're in now. But to put a cap on the driving side, people often kind of romanticize driving, and you were talking about yourself. You love it. I love it. I'm not. Heck, I'll go for a long drive, several 1,000 miles. Is not off the charts for me. So I absolutely miss it. But driving, when you really get into it, you remember it's isolating, it's exhausting, it's kind of unforgiving in a lot of cases too. You end up you're on your own out there. So what part of the job left a mark, that people outside of the industry or outside of driving can rarely understand? Was there anything that kind of capped this portion of your life off that said, this, I guess, positive or negative? What leaves a mark today on you about that?
I mean, it's the biggest engine, the biggest vehicle on the highway. So when I was telling you, like, I was king of the road and the freedom, I think what my mind thinks of the cab is being free and being the king of the road. And this is true with trekking. You're the biggest one out there around those four-wheelers, and this is what stick. And I still think it's the best job ever. Um, yeah. So the freedom
Perfect.
and being the king of
Yeah.
that road.
No, I'm there with you. It is a great job. So and some people, you got to find your niche in the industry to make it the great job. But there's a lot of great jobs out there, and I get the benefit of being able to talk with a number of amazing drivers and former drivers on the podcast here, and it's inspiring. It makes you. I mean, part of me would love to just go back out on the road again, but obviously I've done a few other things. So, but it wouldn't take much, to go out. I've even been talking with somebody about doing a trip with them sometime in the next year or so. But Melanie, if we want to hold on for just a minute and a half, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about what's next with Melanie after she steps out of the truck. We'll see y'all soon.
If your fleet's downtime looks like chaos, you're missing out on GLCS. In the time-critical world of trucking and logistics, every minute counts. Meet GLCS, your expert partner in managed IT and technology services. We integrate seamlessly with your team, bringing seasoned IT professionals with deep trucking and logistics expertise. Imagine your software updates running smoothly, complex issues resolved quickly, and operations humming with efficiency. GLCS has your back. Our support doesn't just fix problems, it prevents them with our industry connections and proactive approach. We keep your trucks rolling and your brokers working. Think of us as the added resource your company needs to unleash its full potential. Visit glcs.net today and keep your business driving forward. GLCS, where efficiency meets expertise.
And we are back. So Melanie, you genuinely seem to enjoy experiences that force you outside of your comfort zone. Am I accurate in that?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Have you always been that way your whole life? Or was that something that, I'm going to guess you have, but is that something that trucking taught you or expanded upon that?
I think trucking shaped me for what was to come, in a sense that, yes, I'll jump down a cliff snowboarding, maybe not at my age, because if I don't, I might not get up, but I used to be that kid, like there's a cliff, I don't care what's beyond the cliff, let's jump it and see. So I was always someone that needed to experience out of my comfort zone. Trucking was one of them, because let's face it, it was a big truck and I wasn't sure at first that I would succeed, but I tried it. So I think the cab and pushing this limit kind of led the foundation of what was to come next in my career, because, speaking on a podcast like this one, this was not something I ever expected I would do in my life. So slowly heading a safety and compliance department. So those were the things that I've always, if you told me I couldn't do it, I would always push and try it. But I think that trucking job, those years on the road, gave me this assurance.
That's perfect. So to pick up our story again, you've now moved into, so you had your first child and then you move into a safety and compliance role for a trucking company. What or when along that journey did you decide that this was going to be your passion? So you certainly have taken the next significant period of time and focused on safety, compliance, and variety of aspects to it. So where along that journey did you figure out that, hey, this is my bag?
I think this will take me back to trucking, because the last time I was on the road for the company that I started in the office as a safety and compliance manager with that mentor, I was on the road for them 2 years before hopping into the office. And there was a crash that I was not responsible, but involved. And obviously those are the things that you'll always remember in your head. And it got me thinking, did I do everything right? Like, was I by any mean responsible for that lady? And she operated her car recklessly, but at one point you wonder, like, could have I saved her somehow? Could have I done something better? And I think that came down from safety, and my mentor talking always about safety, telling us as truck drivers, if you just had a fight with your significant other, give me a call, because if you're frustrated, if you're emotionally, you've had an issue, you're not the safest person behind the wheel right now. I'll be there 24/7. And everything he used to tell us as a truck driver was really resonate with me. And I said, you know what, I want to be this person in a fleet that drivers can rely on if something's going wrong, whether it's personal, professional. When you're sitting behind an 18-wheeler, like 80,000 pounds of freight, you want to be the safest possible. So I think those are the things that, from sitting in the cab, I wanted to make this change for drivers.
Sure. And being able to represent them, I imagine too. So you've been in the chair, and when you sit across the table from a driver who's struggling, you still remember exactly what it felt like to be in that seat. And of course, I haven't driven in a long time either, but that kind of resonates with you. So having that and being able to look at through the driver's eyes is certainly certainly valuable and a good perspective. I think most drivers out there today respond so much better to people who have done the job, and not done the job for a short period of time, but actually done the job and made it their career for a period.
Correct.
So how long were you in the safety role with the carrier?
So after I've been in safety since 2013. I was at two different fleets, and my role or my passion was taking the safety score, like taking the fleet and making it better. So I did that at two carriers before moving into technology. And to me, it was working with the drivers and working with operations. And I think we're evolving as an industry. And now, from our customers here at Isaac, from everyone that I talk to in the industry, I think there's a better synergy between safety and compliance nowadays, safety and operations nowadays, than there was
Sure.
back then. And it's the reality, right? Safety is an investment, or some would say it's a cost, and operations were bringing in revenue. So being that voice for the drivers and working with my ops team and making sure that we were all aligned, building that safety culture and improving our safety scores was always something that I really, really enjoyed. So I did that at two companies, took them from some CSA score, awful CSA score, and bringing the team together and getting operations to jump in with us, and flipping those CSA score was something really, really fun for me to do.
Great. I mean, this probably even applies today with Isaac, and it probably has evolved as more data. I mean, if you look back when you started driving, there was very little data points. I mean, 20, 30 tops that were coming off the trucks. Now there's hundreds, if not thousands, and it's coming in massive quantities. So this question kind of rolls into and has evolved over the last 20 years, especially over the last 10 to 15 years since EOBRs, ELDs, and the connected truck has become more prevalent. So in safety conversations, it can become kind of cold. It can be sort of factual. Here's your data, etc. Violations, cameras, policies, reports, whatnot. So how do you remind people behind that data point, there's a human being. That human being has a family, and that family's waiting for them to come home. So, you go from the cold factual safety to there's a human factor involved, and I think that so to once again recap, the data that drives that discussion has evolved substantially over our careers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the question is how do you remind people behind the data that there's a human being that you're dealing with that data on?
I think it's true a lot of communications, right? You have to have that open channel, and data is data. Data is really important in this industry nowadays. And what I try to do even today when advising fleet is, and I know there's so much to do in a day when you're a safety manager or anyone working in trucking. Most folks have 2-3 hats, like doing a lot of stuff.
Right.
I think using the data not only to coach on behavior that needs correction, or coach drivers on, you named it, violations, but also using that data to show the positive. I think this is when the drivers and the people in the office understand. If you talk just data, they'll forget that there's a human behind it. How was the driver feeling today? Did something happen? Why? Like understanding the why of the outcome of what we're seeing in the data, and then addressing this as the human being. I think it makes a difference. And I used to tell, like, even my ops people, like, have you looked at his logbook today? Have you looked at what he did last night? And like, you were in bed all night, and now you're
Right.
mad at this driver, you're giving him crap, you're doing this, or he left, he didn't leave on time, his inspection's not right, and just getting to understand that it's not truck number 123 with load number XYZ, but it's Nate sitting behind the wheel, and so they used to find me maybe a little bit annoying, but my goal was always, there's a human, and that human has a family to make it home to. So let's look at the human first. The data is important, but there's always something the data is telling you that you need to pry and talk to a human to understand it.
Yeah, I think so you had mentioned this, did operations actually look to see what that driver was up to the night before? And you have so much data operationally at your fingertips to to educate yourself before you're calling the driver. So you already may know what the answer is going to be, or you may have some idea that something didn't go as planned, and you do have plenty of data within just a couple clicks away. So you can prepare yourself for that conversation. As 20 some odd years ago, you were going in blind, and maybe you had mobile comm on the truck at that time, but you didn't have hours of service. Maybe you didn't. I didn't start working for companies that had any sort of GPS or cellular tracking until 2006. So, so it's possible that some companies didn't adopt that until 2010, 2012. So some maybe not even until 2016, until they were required to. But now you have all that data, and to be able to research it before you just instantly come to a conclusion on a driver, I think is extremely important. So, all right, you spent a few years in safety amongst a few different companies, and what happened next then? What's the next step in the career journey?
Well, ELD mandate came into force in 2017. I was head of safety in a Canadian fleet. We needed an ELD because our Canadian fleet was mostly running the US. So we were required to have the same devices. So we were a smaller company, last minute sort of things. We need an ELD. We start shopping around. Everybody's looking at ELDs at the same time. So there's hardware issues. There's not as much availability. We're looking at different companies. And I ended up purchasing Isaac, so buying the Isaac solution, implemented in my trucks, trained a driver, did the whole thing. We were a smaller fleet, so many hats. I did the whole thing, worked with the Isaac team, and I first fell in love with the Isaac technology, and actually I fell in love with the people, the company, the mission. So I worked 3 years from the beginning of the US ELD mandate in 2017, and then the pandemic hit 2020, and I'm sitting home. I have a 7-year-old at that time. Everybody's on lockdown, especially in Canada. Drivers are struggling to cross the border. They still, the fleet I was working for, it was reefer, like California produce. They're struggling to get all the way to California, getting the produce. Like, it was a very difficult, challenging year. We're not allowed to go see our drivers at the office because there was so many regulations. And at one point, I still loved trucking, but I started thinking that 24/7, like being always the emergency responder, was maybe not what I wanted to do. So I started looking around. I think the pandemic had a lot of us reconsidering what we wanted to do with ourselves, but I could not picture myself outside of trucking. In my 25 years in trucking, because it was my first job out of college. I left the industry for not even 6 months, because after 5 months, my significant other at the time said, "You know what, can you just go back to trucking, because you're annoying me." He could not understand why I love that industry and that craziness of having drivers calling me at all hours, but this is what I loved. So I couldn't picture myself out of trucking, but I needed something that's just more or less calls. And one day something happened. I'm talking with my project manager at Isaac. I was offered another job at another trucking company. And when they found out that I was actually going to leave for another company, and you know how those things work, half of the drivers are following you because you have your reputation. So Isaac told me, well, we would need someone that really knows trucking and compliance. We know the technology. We don't have that trucking DNA. If you're to leave that company or customer, because we were a customer, and you're to go to another company, wouldn't you consider coming to Isaac? So it was such a great story, because the president of the fleet I was working with Isaac, we made a deal. I stayed their resource for a year, making sure that if they had any issues, I was still their go-to person, but I was switching to Isaac. So yeah, that's how I got to Isaac in September 2020. I joined Isaac as an expert in compliance.
Wow. Yeah, that's perfect. I think a lot of us transition that way. You know, I had an opportunity in 2011 to go be a VP of Ops at a fairly large fleet. And I chose to go to TMW, which, you know, you work with a whole bunch of my former coworkers now. But had I have not made that decision, I've always loved the technology of the industry. But had I have not made that decision, my career path would have been significantly different over the last, you know, now 15 years. So it's been a minute, but no, that's great. And just for those listening that are not familiar with Isaac, why don't you tell us what Isaac is and what you guys do, or what the company does?
Yeah, so we're a fleet management solution. So for those out there, we do ELDs, cameras, telematics. We're connected we integrate with all the TMSs of the world. You were mentioning Trimble. Yeah, so that's what we do in a nutshell, is the telematics that you have in the truck, and the analytics and everything else. And we were talking data before. We pull so much data and do insights with it and all kinds of amazing things.
Absolutely. I've had the pleasure of working with Isaac and the crew there since, I'm thinking 2017. I'm picking that date off the top of my head. Maybe it was 2018. But I was working on a project with a large company in Calgary. So, and that's my first encounter with Isaac. And since then, you've definitely occupied a much larger footprint in the industry than what it was in 2017, 2018. So, always enjoy working with the crew there, and lots and lots of fleets are using your products these days. Do you, or can you say how many trucking companies have deployed Isaac?
I wouldn't have the right number.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
It's quite a few. So, all right. So, in starting to kind of wrap this up, so so you've now spent how many years on the technology side?
Almost 6 years.
6 years. So what's holding you to that? And lots of people end up transitioning. Maybe they don't stay there; they go back to the fleet side. That happens pretty often. But after 6 years, you're probably stuck in technology now. So what keeps you there?
Well, I think I have a very, very unique role, and I'm very fortunate because one of the things I was scared of, and I was sure I would go back to the carrier side, the fleet side, is the connection with the driver, with those passionate people from the industry. And I was a little afraid at first of sitting in an office, not seeing one driver. Like, I still have my friends that are drivers, and with my very unique role, I get to travel. We see each other at trade shows. So I get to be on the road at industry events to make sure that I stay afoot in the industry, that I can talk to folks from the industry, that I can bring back all those insight, all this knowledge to our team here, whether it's like my direct team of compliance and support specialists, and I can translate trucking with some very smart technology savvy people so that we understand what our customers need. When we're getting a support call, I can work with product and advise on product. Being an ex-driver, I can try the Isaac tablet and test it out. So I think the reason why I'm staying first is I get to sit into trucking association, whether it's Quebec, Ontario. I'm involved in the US with the ATA, the Women in Motion. So I get to do a lot of stuff that keeps me very close to the industry. And I think this is what's making me not go back. And also being the safety and compliance expert here, being able to advise those, and I wouldn't want to not say the right amount of fleet, but I was telling you how, like, what I really, really, truly enjoy was flipping and helping my fleet to have a better CSA score. Now I can do that exponentially to all our customers. And this is something I do, virtual safety roundtables with our customers and talk through stuff. This is what keeps me in the industry while staying on the technology side and helping those customers.
We have similar answers to that question, and it quickly became evident to me that it wasn't just, if I work for one organization, I can help one organization. And I've been in and out of well over 1,000 fleets in that 15 years, which sounds crazy, but that's how much I travel. Or I should say I impacted 1,000 fleets. In some cases, it was people that maybe worked for me, but I'm definitely approaching 1,000 that I've visited at this point. And the the reality of it is to go back to one path with one organization. I don't think I could personally do it. But I'll always love that driver's seat. So, final question. When you look back, when you first entered brokerage, when you earned your CDL, climbed in the truck, when you forced your way into flatbed, I'm saying forced, so, and you kind of refused to stay inside boundaries that people had built for you. What would you, with all of those experiences that you've been through to your whole life, if you could talk to the person before she entered the brokerage, what would you tell that person today?
Wow, that's a good one.
Gotta leave the best for last.
Believe in yourself, and don't listen to the negative. There's always going to be someone that's either jealous or judgmental. Don't listen to those. Don't give them any energy. Just believe in yourself and surround yourself with the positive change agent around you that are there to support and elevate you to the next level. Because I spent a lot of time like just focusing on all the negative stuff that I was told, that go back to your kitchen, all those stuff that I was giving way too much importance on the negative talks that I was getting. So it would be just tune them out.
And a minor TED talk on that. I think this industry has a tendency of leaning towards the negative. We love there's a lot of people, right? So does society. We love to lean towards the negative, and to seek out the positive every day, I think, is important, but also to look at things through the positive lens. Just because it looks negative to you does not mean that it is. You have to look at it through a certain eye of the beholder on why things are going a particular way. But, if you are constantly tracking towards the positive, if you're constantly fighting for positive, then you're going to surround yourself with positive. And it is a good life lesson. It's one that I had to learn the hard way too. So I think we're very similar in a lot of ways. But you have to travel down that road to actually get there. And, if you could learn it the other way, my guess is the original or the early Melanie probably wouldn't have listened to herself.
Nope, not at all.
Fair enough. So, well, Melanie, I really appreciate you coming on. This hour went fast. It's one that we had talked about when I first met you, probably several years ago at this point. I don't even know when. But it was around the time that, or maybe I'd met you previously, but when we started talking, I said, well, it'd be great to have you on an episode. I think that was early on when I started the podcast. So this has been in the back of my mind for a long time. And it's been an absolute pleasure being able to walk through your career and chat with you. So I really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thank you, Nate. Thank you for the opportunity. It was great. Another tick out of my comfort zone.
There you go.
Thank you.
And anytime you have a message to put out or whatnot, you're welcome to use our platform to do so. Melanie, where can people find you or Isaac? I mean, what are some ways that they can find you on social media or whatnot?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Melanie Simard, Isaac Instrument. Same thing for the website, isaacinstrument.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, I thank you, Melanie. We'll see you at some conference down the road. So
You will.
all right. Thanks a lot, Melanie.
Thank you.
So Melanie Simard, the king of the road. There's reasons why stories like Melanie's matter. This industry has plenty of people with opinions, plenty of people with titles, plenty of people who know how to sit in a meeting and talk about what drivers, what fleets, what operations teams should be doing. But earned credibility feels a lot different. It comes from taking the hard road and getting bruised and beat up and learning the lessons the uncomfortable way. and continuing to show up with a little more perspective every time. That's what stood out to me today. Melanie has built a career around understanding the people who keep this industry moving and challenging companies to do better by them. And whether she is helping a fleet build a stronger safety culture, pushing the industry forward, or apparently launching herself down a mountain on a snowboard with very little concern for her personal well-being, Melanie brings the same thing every time: grit, honesty, curiosity, and a willingness to keep moving forward. To everyone watching and listening, thank you for joining us. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, drive forward with purpose and innovation. Thanks for watching.